Welcome into the Q&A show. My name is Bob Theriot, and I'm so happy that you're joining me here today. I've got a really special guest, special friend that I've been wanting to get on the show for a long time now. But before I bring him on, I just want to go ahead and send a shout out to our sponsors, ElPasoHomesDirectory.com. If you are a real estate agent, a home builder, a loan officer, and you'd like to claim a free listing, go to realestatehomesdirectory.com and claim your free listing today. Be found all over the internet. Now, this is specifically for El Paso. So if you're in El Paso and you sell real estate, you need to be on this directory. So I highly recommend that you guys go there now. Also, if you're watching the show, do me a favor, hashtag live, so we know that you're watching the show. We always welcome questions. If we have time, we'll take them at the end, but go ahead and comment below. Hashtag live. Let us know that you're here. And if you happen to catch a show and replay, go ahead and hashtag replay so that we know that you have seen this show later on. The more hearts, the more likes, the more shares we get, the more people I can reach, the more people me and my guests can help. And that's the goal. We really want to highlight people that are from El Paso, have been in El Paso, doing business in El Paso. And I really want to help as many business owners as I can. So without further delay, I'm going to bring on one of my best friends in the world. We've known each other for well over 3 decades. He is a expert in property tax consulting. And so I thought it'd be really good to have him on. So let me bring him on. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to my friend, Mr. Aaron Gemoets. Hey, Aaron, buddy, what's up? You're on my show.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm excited to have you. It's so cool that you're here. You know, I've been doing this for a while, so it's a treat to have you on my show. Really cool. Thank you.
Well, I'm really honored. I heard I'm about 43rd or 44th interview, and you've got some pretty big names at that list.
Yeah, I think this is your episode 43, so it's pretty cool, And I just thought that it'd be, we talk a lot about different things, and, with taxes and us being in an election year, I know that there's a lot of questions people have when it comes to property taxes. They don't know where to start, where to begin. I know that property tax season is kind of late for residential. So why don't we talk a little bit? Why don't you give some background on what you do? I know you work with Paradigm Tax Group out of San Antonio, correct?
Yes. My office is in San Antonio, and I'm responsible for basically what we call Central Texas, which is from Austin to Brownsville, all the way out to El Paso, and then back to El Paso. Any counties that are in that triangle, I'm responsible. My office is responsible for that area.
And so what does your job entail? What is a property tax consultant?
So what we do is we represent clients who own commercial property in Texas. We file appeals for them at the appraisal district level. And then if necessary, the second phase is at the district court level. And we do essentially the valuation part of an appeal.
And so you're representing a lot of people with commercial properties, correct?
Yes, we do handle a small portion of residential properties, but they're mostly for the commercial owners that we represent.
So what would you say is like a big concern people have? Of course, they don't want to pay more taxes, right?
Yes.
So what's the big mistake that you see made a lot, or when is it that they come to you too late?
So too late is after deadline. So typically the assessment date in Texas is January 1 of each year. Notices, which is the appraisal district's opinion of value. The notices of value usually come in your mailbox around April 1st or so, but the deadline to file the appeal is May 15th. If you don't review your notice or it's after May 15th, then you're kind of there's still some opportunity, but it's May 15th, the deadline. And over the next, let's just call it 90 days after that appeal is when we conduct our hearings and present our cases to the 2 different levels when necessary.
And that's the same for residential and commercial? The deadline's the same?
Yes,
okay.
And there's a third called business personal property. So businesses like our friend Southwest Auto Glass, they have a lot of equipment that they use to generate their business. So that's the third area of property tax, which is business personal property.
So what is an appraisal district? Let's get to the basics, right? Because I think there's some people, if you're in business, you've dealt with them. A lot of people probably ignore their notices. So explain the appraisal district.
So what the appraisal district is, it's the entity that values the properties in the county. So obviously in El Paso, it's the El Paso County Appraisal District. Actually worked there for a few years. They value on a mass scale. So based on tables and computer programs, they're valuing a couple 100,000 parcels in the county. And like we spoke about earlier, it's residential properties, it's vacant land, it's business personal property, and then the commercial properties, which is, you know, shopping centers, warehouses, office buildings, motels, et cetera. And so their job, their responsibility is to value a property at market value as of January 1st. And what market value is what would a property exchange for? And there's several different ways of calculating that. So for homes, it's easy. You compile some sales of homes that are similar to yours, and you come up with a calculation per foot, and you calculate that times how many square feet you have, and that's your value. So it gets a lot more intricate when you're talking about commercial properties. There's the income approach on commercial properties. There's the cost approach, which is basically calculating the square footages and all the extra features that a commercial property has. And you go off of the tables and calculate a value. So that's basically how you defend the value if you're the appraisal district. And on the opposite side, on the taxpayer side, you compile that evidence to either agree or disagree with the value of the appraisal district. And that's my job. Is I compile as much data. I mean, my whole industry is just nothing but a data industry. We have several subscriptions just in our office that we spend quite a bit of money on just to be up to date on the data. So we compile that data into reports and present that information to the appraisers after that appeal date, after an appeal's filed, and discuss it on a one-to-one basis with the appraisal district. And if we don't agree on a value, then we go to what's called an appraisal review board hearing.
Okay. I was going to ask you next, what was the process?
Yes. And so what an appraisal review board is, it's a separate entity made up by taxpayers. They're voted in, or they're chosen by, depending on the size of the appraisal district, they're either chosen by the appraisal district or actually by county judges, actually nominate them to the appraisal district. But the important thing is they're basically taxpayers like ourselves. And they give us a 30-minute hearing or so for each side to present their evidence. And at the end of that hearing, they make a decision based on, you know, who provided the better evidence. If the taxpayers still disagree on that value, so I basically spend about half my time on that first phase. If you don't agree with that value, the property owner can file a lawsuit in district court, and that's where I spend my other half of my time, is not an attorney. But that same information that I compile for those first hearings, or the first phase of hearings, is I'll update that data, change the data as time goes on, and present another report or a similar report at the litigation level. Not many go straight to trial, but
that was my next question. How many go? What percentage go to trial?
Well, in 27 years, I've never been to an actual trial, but we've been on the footsteps of the courthouse a couple hundred times at least. But it doesn't happen frequently. It's usually amicably settled before then at a mediation. So you have to go to formal mediation before actually going to trial. And 98% of our cases in the litigation stage are settled at mediation or soon thereafter.
And how long does that process usually take?
It varies county to county. So my three big counties are Travis, which is Austin, Texas, and Bexar County, which is San Antonio, Texas. Mm-hmm. And then El Paso is my third largest. In San Antonio, it'll take about 18 to 24 months, depending on the property type. Some properties take a little bit longer because the fight's a little bit tougher. But it's usually 18 months to 12 months is when the lawsuit will end. By that time, we've already come up on that next year of January 1 for a following assessment. So sometimes it makes sense to keep the fight going and include that second year. So it's a 2-year lawsuit. But I guess the general answer is it's within a year or so. It's pretty common.
And I know that you get what you pay for, right? That's when you're hiring attorneys, consultants. when should someone seek you out? So if somebody owns one commercial property, when somebody owns two, depending on how expensive or what that property is valued at, when would you recommend somebody go see you?
In my opinion, the appraisal districts have a very tough job. I mean, in Texas, Texas is a non-disclosure state, so there's not much sales data. In residential properties, most of the data is in multiple listing services. Unfortunately, the appraisal district in El Paso does not have that subscription. So their job's pretty tough. They have to rely on questionnaires that they send out. On a home, I think taxpayers should give it a try themselves. At least go sit down. You don't have to be licensed. You don't have to be an expert. I believe it's the responsibility of the appraisal district to provide that data when a protest is filed. So when you sit down with an appraiser, they should go over the basic information, whether it's the year built of the property, the square footage, if you have a swimming pool, etc. They should be able to.
You've helped me with mine. You've helped me with mine where I protested and I actually won with all the tips you gave me. I took photos of the house. I was able to go down there. I had to go in front of I don't know if it was 3 or 4 guys, and they literally they talk about okay, it's kind of weird, but yeah, it's like you're almost going to court.
Sure. And so if you see something in that explanation where they're telling you they derive the value from, then if you can correct them with information that'll change their mind, then they should be able to make that correction and make you happy. A lot of the times that doesn't happen because their data is their data and they're going to stick to the value. So where we come in is if you see an error and you need to compile information to fight that or to present that information to the hearing. Like I said, we do commercial properties. So our focus is on commercial properties, improved properties, where there's income information, there's tenant information, rent, what we call rent rolls. It's just so intricate at that level because you're looking at income. It's basically an opinion of value in the future. So if the assessment date is January 1, you're basically coming up with an opinion of value of what somebody would pay for it on January 1, looking at historical data, historical income information for the property, and calculating a value as of January 1, compiling sales information to see, what this property would sell for if somebody was trying to come up with a list price as of January 1.
So what advice would you give? So we were talking, I asked you kind of when should somebody seek you out though? So and you said it varies, right? But if you own one property that's valued, I would think it would be worth or behoove someone to seek you out, right?
So a property that's valued at $1 million, you're paying tax of about, let's just call it $25,000 to $30,000, depending on what school district you're in, because the school district tax rates vary. But in my opinion, I've kind of used the rule of thumb of $1 million, but heck, a property valued at $500,000, if it's a 10% error, that could be a significant amount of tax as well. So it just depends each year. I think if a property owner reviews the information and gets the basic information from the appraisal district and they see an error, most certainly contact a professional, somebody that's experienced not only in property tax matters, but specifically in the county. So even though I don't live in El Paso, I was born and raised here, spent 30 years here, and I was actually on the appraisal district side for 7 years. So I know the county very well. In the 20 years that I've been gone, every year I've still represented a pretty large portfolio of properties in the county. So I come back every year and represent my clients with the knowledge that I know of the market.
And what changes have you seen here specifically in El Paso that maybe there was best practices back when you were here that have changed, or is it just pretty much the same run of the mill?
The rules and the law have not changed very much. So really the one thing that has changed is the appraisers. There are some appraisers that have been there a long time. In fact, there's appraisers, good friends of mine that are still there that we started together in '94. But I think the basic answer is the staff changes. So you could protest your property 1 year and go back and you'll deal with somebody else. Other changes is the market's changed considerably. I think in the last 7 years, it's grown tremendously. Of course, the residential is kind of a given, but also on the commercial side, There's a lot of apartments that have been constructed. There's not much activity in the warehouse industry, but as far as actual transactions, they are transacting every month. There's new leases, so that data changes, monthly as well. The values change every year. Mm-hmm. There's been some really big retail projects come online, and then of course the news over the past, let's just call it 2 weeks, with the Amazon property being the talk of the town.
Right.
There's some pretty big changes in construction.
So with that Amazon coming in, I mean, do you think, or do you foresee the properties around that area going up in value?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, just to give you an example of that, my mother's a real estate broker, and she could already see the activity of houses for sale in that area. It's from one day to the next from that announcement in the El Paso Times. I mean, if I owned a commercial property and I had let's just say I had a vacant space come up that I was going to rent for, $15 a square foot, since Amazon's a mile away, I'm probably going to change that rent to $18 to $20. And, market dictates rental per foot, but I just think common sense with 5,000 jobs coming in, or I'm sorry, did they say 700 or so?
That's about the average 40,000 a year, I believe, is what I heard.
Yeah. So I mixed that with Tesla. Tesla announced that they're opening a manufacturing facility in Austin that's going to create 5,000 jobs. But
right.
700 jobs, 700 people coming to a building on the east side is, that's a ton of traffic getting to and going to lunch in that area. So it's tremendously impacting both the residential and commercial property, and not just the east side. I think El Paso in general as well. But it's a big impact on values. They're not going to go down in value with something profound as that.
So it would really benefit somebody that owns commercial property to get a hold of you, and we'll give them your information later. But yeah, if they need help, because I think another misconception is that people think they pay you up front.
Correct. So,
right. So explain that.
So again, we consult on values. There are some instances where we don't actually file an appeal. We'll actually submit a report and have a meeting, and at the end of it, we've determined that the value's in line. I had mentioned early on that it's market value as of January 1, but there's also a section in the code which basically gives you the right to have the value based on what competing properties are valued at. So if you have an apartment complex that's at $150 a foot, but you've got 3 other apartment complexes in the area that are valued at $80 a foot, well, then the property tax code gives you that right to be valued at $80 a foot. And so that data that I mentioned before, I mean, we spend about $50,000 on some software tools that compiles and updates that equity data, or the equal and uniform data of assessment comparables, and we generate reports to fight that level of an appeal, which we call equal and uniform. So hope that answered your question. But
yeah, it did. But I just wanted to clear that up.
I'm sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent, but we get paid based on our performance. So if I save you $1, I'm going to charge you a percentage of that dollar. If we don't save you anything, then you don't owe us anything. So it's an incentive driven. I mean, we also charge by the hour, or we charge by the property, but most of it is based on performance. And
right.
I think everybody wins. The taxpayer wins, and we benefit if we can save them money. So it's just, that's the majority of our fee structure, but we also do the other two as well.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about COVID-19 and how it's going to affect real estate, right? So the appraisal districts they're in a pickle, I think, for next year, probably even this year, right? Because I mean, the deadline passed in May, but how are they going to raise taxes on people right now when you have 1 in 4 Americans, last I saw, out of work, right? And so how is it affecting property values? What insight could you share with the audience about that?
Sure. So the most important factor is that the pandemic really didn't happen, at least in the United States, economically till March, when the shutdown happened, when cities and states were actually shutting down and quarantining in March. But at the beginning of our interview today, I mentioned that January 1's the assessment date. So because it didn't happen until March, it doesn't affect the value for 2020. I do believe, kind of on a side note, just based on the stock market and the increase in the stock market the past, let's just call it 4 years, I do have some colleagues and some clients that in December felt that the bubble was going to not burst, but it was certainly going to decline or flatten. And so this is, November, December of last year, let's just call it last quarter, 2019. With that said, the big issue is going to be January 1, 2021. So is it going to impact values as of January 1, 2021? Absolutely. If you own a retirement community, assisted living community, if you own an office building, it's going to impact it so much that, we could have a 3-hour Q&A show just on the impact of what COVID's had on office buildings.
So, I mean, they're going to rise, is what you're saying, right? Property value.
No, on the contrary. I mean,
so they're going to drop. You think taxes? So that's why I was thinking they're going to have a hard time collecting taxes on people. Like it would be hard to raise, but aren't values going to go up automatically? How is that going to work?
No, they do not. So again, it's supposed to be valued as of January 1, and you look back in the past of the prior year or 2 prior years at the income stream and determine the value as of January 1. But then you also look at sales activity, and the sales activity in 2020 has just dropped dramatically as far as volume of sales, not only in the US, but globally. As an example of a hotel, hotels are valued based on their income stream from the past couple of years, and then you actually estimate in the future what you can charge daily, monthly, whatever for a hotel. The hotels industry has just been decimated in the year 2020. So if you're looking at the value as of January 1, 2021, that income stream is probably 40% of what it was the prior year. And when I brought up retirement centers, I mean, if my parents were getting ready to go into a retirement center next year, I think my brothers and I are going to make a decision to take turns with them instead of keeping them in a retirement facility and, have the risk of contacting the virus. So it's tremendously impacted commercial values. You brought up tax, which is the most important part of this whole conversation, right? Is, how do we save property taxes? Unfortunately, the entities in a county collect that tax to pay for their budgets. So unfortunately, budgets have either stayed the same or has increased for the different entities, whether it's the school district or the city. And if we use the city as an example, their revenue for 2020 has just been decimated as well, because you have sales tax and permits and other revenue streams that are just dramatically down as far as a percentage, but yet their services are still costing the same. So it's a simple formula with the property value, the tax rate, and the budget. And if 2 of those go down dramatically, that leaves, the tax rate to go up. So in my opinion, values are going to go down significantly. Budgets aren't going to go down significantly. So that means
does that include home values? Because
yes.
Paso, that the real estate market is hotter than ever, right? Like
yes. Now
that's right now.
In my opinion, I know it sounds crazy that I would say something that it's totally different, but let's just use El Paso for example. El Paso, that is drastically different because I've seen, let's just call it 10 to 15% increases in value on residential properties. And even in first quarter and second quarter 2020, those double-digit increases are still going on. And now that we're in the third quarter, sales are strong. I believe there was a small demand, a slight decrease in supply in residential in El Paso, and that's kind of what started a spike in the market. Let's just call it March to today.
Right, low inventory.
So now that the inventory is catching up with builders, starting to be a little more active, I don't think residential properties will be affected for 2021, but in my opinion, the entire commercial industry will be impacted for 2021.
So you're thinking that property values they'll leave them flat or they won't touch them, and then you think commercial properties will go down? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
Okay, good.
But again, those values, the opinion is as of January 1. The notices come out in April. So, we'll just have to wait. It's kind of a wait and see what happens in April. But even this last quarter, there could be a miracle in every single industry that's on the decline now, from airline industry to the office sector of commercial real estate. There could be a miracle and it bounces back, but I don't think it's coming in late last quarter 2020. In fact, I see it the next 36 months or so staying pretty either steady or on the decline as well.
Yeah, I don't think people have really felt the ramifications of what's going on and how bad the economy was shut down. I think it's going to take a while to see that fallout, those effects of what's going on. Who knows what's going to happen if a vaccine comes out, by fall, like they're predicting? Then maybe you're right, like a miracle where you see the stock market shoot up and you see the housing market change or values change. I mean, we don't know, right? It's all a guess at this. It's all speculation right now.
Well, I'll give you a San Antonio local example. There's an insurance company there that has probably 1.2 million square feet of office. And I guess it was maybe the end of June, they basically announced like nobody's coming back here until January 1st. So they made that decision in June to not have their employees go back to the 1 million plus square footage building. And they may change their mind in December. So that's what I mean by how much office building has been impacted by the quarantine. You can go into a little bit, deeper detail and say, if you and I want to open an insurance company in San Antonio, and our plan in first quarter 2020 was to hire 100 people and have 120 cubicles, I think our plan today is going to drastically change, and we'll work from home or we'll work on some kind of schedule, and we'll lease the space at a quarter of the square footage instead of the original square footage that we did research and budgeting for. And that's not just office. That's not just the insurance sector. That's everybody that's leasing and renting offices.
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, I think Twitter announced, that they said that their employees, and they have thousands of employees, were given the option to not ever come back to the office. They send them $1,000 stipend so that they can buy, a computer or a printer or whatever they needed, and they never have to come back to the office. And Twitter has massive office space. Facebook followed. They did the same thing. I think this is going to be very eye-opening to a lot of businesses in the sense that they're realizing, and they're actually seeing that productivity is going up with a lot of employees that are staying home. So what's going to happen with all these properties? I don't think you're going to see huge skyscrapers going up. I mean, for the immediate future, maybe later on, like you said, things could change. But right now, people are becoming very streamlined. They're cutting their costs, their bottom lines. So who knows, right?
Yeah. So actually, we're fortunate enough to have Facebook as a client, and they have a lot of square footage in what we call Central Texas. But to give you another example on the personal level, is I have about 2,300 square foot in my office in San Antonio, and our building's a 10-story building. I quarantined for 2 weeks in March, and because of deadlines and my clients still needing my service, I went back to the office full time April 1st forward, and for 6 weeks, I wouldn't run into anybody from my parking garage to my office. So my office from last week is still at about less than 10% occupied.
Wow.
So all the companies that are in my building, whether it's an insurance company or an oil research company, I don't see my co-tenants. I don't see I don't see anybody. Everybody's staying at home, working remotely. And the silver lining is production is up and people are working from home and changing the technology of how they're communicating, and our productivity is awesome. My coworkers the people I work with worked from home about half the time lately. We had a few people come back in May. We went full speed ahead May 15th because of our deadline, but then we switched up. So this whole thing has caused us to make changes every week. And I think a lot of people are making those same decisions. Like, again, when my lease is up, I'm not going to lease 2,300 square feet.
Right.
And that's my opinion. And, maybe things change. Maybe my marketing efforts are really successful and I have to hire 4 people instead of the 2 people I'm hoping for. But I'm going to have them work from home.
Right.
That's just and again, it could drastically change with the vaccine that you mentioned, but
right.
I'm not trying to be a gloom and doom.
No,
but
be realistic.
Yeah. So part of the other services that I do. So I protest properties. I consult during the lawsuit stages or the litigation stages. But a small portion of my time is, because it involves tax, is, if you and our friend Ralph decide to build a 1,000,000 square foot or $1 million warehouse, the underwriters for the loan, or you yourself, if you're paying cash for it, I'm going to do a report that's called the tax projection. So from the day that you purchase it to 5 years forward, I'm going to give you an estimate of what you're going to pay tax every year. That way your plan and your budget is as precise as possible. And I'm predicting the future value, but I've got so much data, and I'd like to say I've got enough expertise that I can give you a history of evidence that backs up my 5-year projection. And when I said that November, December of 2019 was a few of our clients were showing or sharing signs of a downturn.
Right.
Last year, the first 3 quarters, my tax estimates that my coworkers and I were doing were pretty level. The number of tax estimates we were doing per week or per month was pretty consistent, but they dramatically dropped fourth quarter 2019. And I've not seen that happen in 7 years. So if you go back 7 years, that was well, now it's been 10 years, but if you go back 10 years, I haven't seen it in 10 years. And that was the last real estate crash of 08, 09, 010.
Right.
So in 2011 forward, our tax estimates were, saw a big dip in how many we were paid to do. So that's where I think, that's where my prediction of not a bubble, but a decrease in activity is. Last quarter 2019, I did a lot less tax estimates.
And with your expertise, Aaron, so let's assume that there's people out there that own commercial properties, right? Because that's what you specialize in. I mean, I know you know a little bit about everything in properties, but what could you tell them right now? What should they be doing? How should they be planning 2021? Because I know that a lot of people thought, the deadline was May 15th, right? But is it too late for them to do anything for 2020?
Well, based on the COVID, it's too late.
Okay.
To file a protest based on COVID. But let's say, we actually have clients that were working from home and quarantined and not able to look at their mail at the office. And let's just say somebody forgot to protest their property. There was a lot scarier things going on in April than to, look at your notice of appraised value. So it is too late technically to file a protest for 2020, but there's I don't want to use the word loophole because that sounds like cheating, but there's sections in the property tax code, the Texas property tax code, where you can file a late appeal. And I can give you some examples of El Paso where we've had a client that just, didn't look at his notice of appraised value till September, and we filed a protest on it. I'm sorry, we reviewed some information, we reviewed some data. We looked at what assessment comparables of properties similar to his were appraised at. Mm-hmm. And some of that data showed that we could file the protest based on that section of the property tax code. So there is an opportunity. It's a lot more difficult to qualify for that. But, send me an email or give me a call and give me the property ID identification number, and I can start researching it. But there's a sliver of a chance for a late appeal. We've been really successful in doing that. We just have to review the data to see if there's a possibility to do that. There's always a possibility, but
right.
We'll dig through.
I've got your number up there, your phone, text, fax. It's one number, so we make it really easy for people to reach you, right? So There you go. Any final tips, anything that you think that I didn't cover or you think somebody should know? Like I said, game planning next year. Is there something they should do right now? I know you don't have a crystal ball, but.
No, I think just compiling as much data as you can, whether you're a shopping center owner and there's, 2 competitors that are under construction to build space that's similar to yours that might lease it for less per square foot than you. So it's just all about compiling data. If you own an apartment complex and there's really bad construction on your street and tenants are mentioning that it's, difficult to get in and they might leave because it's difficult to get out. Just data, anything that's specific to your property that the appraisal district doesn't know about, just start compiling some notes. If you're a homeowner and you know your neighbor's house sold down the street and it was completely remodeled and yours isn't, that's a piece of information that these, appraisal district guys and gals don't know about. So they need that information. And that's where my job comes in, is I compile it and I go show them. And if they don't agree with me, then we go to the review board or we go to court, and we'll figure it out there.
And let's be clear. So Aaron is an El Pasoan through and through. His soul's here. His family's here. He does office out of San Antonio, but you come back and forth, Aaron. So if somebody needs some help, you'll come down here, right?
Yes, absolutely. So I try to spend as much time as possible in El Paso. Again, born and raised, have a lot of family here, but I also have quite a bit of clients here and have had over the past 20 years.
Right. So you guys, there's his number on the screen, Aaron Gemoets, again, 210-446-1351. Best way to get a hold of you. And you're on LinkedIn as well, right, Aaron?
I'm on LinkedIn. Paradigm Tax Group has a website. You can go on that website and click on the San Antonio office. And
do you have that URL that you could throw out there?
Pardon?
Do you know the URL you could throw out there? The website?
ParadigmTax.com.
ParadigmTax.com, you guys. All right, Aaron. Well, any final words before I let you go? I know you're a super busy guy. So
I'll just say it again. I'm honored to be on your show. You've got some really big names on your resume of who you've interviewed. I know it's big names in the marketing industry and some other industries, but I'm really glad you brought me to.
No, I'm proud to have you on. It's my honor. Thank you so much for coming on. It was awesome. I'm so glad you finally made it.
Thank you.
All right, Aaron. Well, we'll touch base in a little while. Thank you so much for joining us here. Okay.
Have a good day.
You too. You guys, thank you so much for watching the Q&A show. Very happy that you made that. I hope that was valuable to you. If it was, please hashtag replay if you're watching this in replay mode. If you're watching it now, say something, say hi, hit that heart button, share it out so that we can help as many people as we can. And you guys, again, for you real estate agents, loan officers, home builders, claim your free listing now at elpasohomesdirectory.com. It raises your SEO. It makes you findable and searchable online. And what's better than free advertising? So you guys, thank you again. I know you have a choice for being here. You can be anywhere in the world. So thank you for watching the Q&A show. Until next week, I want you to take care of one another and stay safe. Have a great week. Take care.